Well, welcome to the Fourth Provider Podcast, and very, very stoked to have a very special guest on the podcast today, and none other than New Zealand's best-known fishery, Matt Watson. Welcome, Matt.
Oh, hey, Carl.
How are you? How have you spent the last 6 weeks? Well, we've sort of been locked away from what we love doing, and where have you spent it, and who have you spent it with?
Well, family, of course, bubble, so, and that's been real good. There's been a real positive to sort of come out of it. I've had a couple of lockdown birthdays at home, whereas, what a lot of people don't realise is with the amount of time I spend away from home, and no, it's definitely not all fishing, it's, got a lot of business commitments. I've missed out on quite a few family birthdays and those sorts of things. So it was good just to be there, around for the kids' birthdays, my birthday as well. So that was all really cool. But business has sort of just kept rolling as well, except we've just had to do it separately. Like I'm in our office and studios today, and it's just me here. Everyone else is working from home. So yeah, we've actually just, in a lot of ways, my work hasn't changed a lot, because what people don't realise is that I'll quite often do a 6-week stint where I don't get to go out fishing. It's all 60 hours a week indoors, doing business deals, dealing with broadcasters, editing the shows, except now we're just doing that as a team remotely. They're all working from home, and so crazy.
Yeah, it has been crazy times. I must admit, I've liked just that little break, just to sit back and have a good think about where we go next, and am I sort of doing the right thing and all of that, and maybe tweak a few things up. And it's been good, especially good once we were let back out and to be able to get back in the water. And I see you did a similar thing. Got out diving straight away. What was it like after sort of being locked away and missing the ocean for so long? What was it like getting back in the water? It was really fantastic for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, as you can imagine, funnily enough, I didn't actually know how much I'd missed it until I got back, until I actually saw the water. Where I'd headed out, we've got a building site which is right on the coast, so the lockdown's kind of thrown a spanner in the works with our building at a critical stage, sort of trying to get out of the ground in a tricky building site. And it's only 20 metres from the ocean we're approved to build. So headed out there, as soon as we were unlocked to, with the contractors to get things underway. And honestly, only as an afterthought, I threw my dive gear in. I'd been that busy, I actually hadn't felt that I'd missed it. But as soon as I drove down the driveway towards the beach and saw the ocean right there, I just like, holy shit, man, I've got to get in there, and got the work done that I needed to get done on site. And it wasn't until I got on the water I realised, man, geez, that was what's been missing from my life from the last 5 weeks. That freedom and the peace and quiet, and a bit of a break from the voices in my own head as well, that are sort of going, geez, this has had a big impact on business and sponsorship and all that sort of stuff. So that's always buzzing away in the background. Yeah. And I find that freediving is one of the few times where I can actually fully switch off and just concentrate on what's in front of me, what might swim out behind that next rock, sort of strategically thinking about how I'm going to approach, the next ledge, and just, that's all I'm thinking about. Whereas literally, from 2 minutes stepping out of the water, I'm already starting to think about all the other things I've got going on in my life. So I think it's just I don't even have to shoot a fish to be happy with spearfishing. In fact, quite often on that very dive, I got a bunch of crays, which was good, but I could have bowled over a 25-pound snapper that was just, geez, it just swam out in front of me. I swam around the corner to look at a crag, and this big black snapper swam out, and my first instinct was, "Balls! Wow, what an opportunity!" And then, fortunately, I was able to sort of stay calm enough and go, "Hang on, what do you need with that?"
Good, just seeing
And
it.
and actually, it was amazing. It felt like it sat there for 10 seconds, but it was more like 2 seconds probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it eventually figured out that it was in danger and boosted off. So it's just, things like that. And I think I was actually spending a bit of time thinking about it today, looking at some footage of which we're editing at the moment of spear tagging, where I've developed an applicator that goes on the end of your spear gun, so you don't have to kill the fish, you can tag it instead.
Yeah.
And just comparing the footage, and it's myself and other guys, we had another guy using the spear tagger for the very first time, and how close he was able to get to fish that are otherwise more spooky. And I thought for the first time about it today, how fish have this innate sense of when they're in danger. Like, I mean, you would have seen it in the water yourself, and God knows how many times on bloody Blue Planet or whatever, a school of fish with a shark cruising right through the middle of them. And those fish aren't bothered by the shark because they can tell by the shark's body language and everything that shark's not going to eat them. 15 minutes later, I've seen it with marlin. I've been in filming marlin, cruising in amongst some kahawai. The kahawai weren't bothered. Then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 of the marlin lit up and got it, and all of a sudden the kahawai were like, holy shit just got real. And they ball up or they take off. And I think it's almost the same. The moment that the Sparrow put that spear applicator on the end of his gun, he was no longer going down to kill a kingy, he was going down to try and tag one. All of the other fish stayed closer to him. And in the kingfish case, it's an interesting thing. Anyway, I've digressed from your question, but it's just something that sort of occurred to me today. And like the number of times I'll have big snapper, like I spoke about, swim out in front of me when I'm looking for a cray. People always say, whenever I've not got my gun, that's when I put my gun down, that happens. I think that could be something to do with, the old fish's innate sense of danger. Might be a little bit more acute than we think. Maybe those things aren't coincidences.
Yeah. Oh, it's a little bit like I just got out of the water from 4 hours of getting a feed. Went for a bit of a free dive over at Sailors and got a couple of crays and shot some butters. And even with the butterfish, if you dive down, nestle yourself in the kelp, look down and almost take your mind completely off the fact you're going to shoot one. As soon as you look up, there's usually one straight in front of you. Spear gun.
Yeah, dead right.
It's amazing. It's amazing how that free diving, just immersing yourself in the ocean, how it calms you down. I thought I was pretty chilled out during the whole lockdown, but as soon as I got out and walked in from my first free dive, Tia, my partner, was like, "Whoa, you look completely different. You're like yourself."
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit like guys that love surfing. It's the same thing. It does. It has a big effect on your disposition.
Yeah.
And I'm new to it as well. I definitely don't consider myself a free diver.
Yeah.
Well, for starters, most of them are fruitcakes. I'll say that to all my Sparrow mates as well, mate. They're a little bit odd, that bunch, mate. There's not enough oxygen to the brain, and they'll get hard out on it. So I definitely don't want to be described as a spear fisherman or a free diver. I'm more a fisherman that one day decided to put a bloody mask and snorkel on and have a closer look at what's going on under the water and just loved it. So. Yeah, so maybe we change the subject before I sound like too much of a bloody Sparrow, because I don't want to be pigeonholed to be one of those freaks.
So that whole thing of both of us getting out straight after lockdown and gathering a feed of kai. I see a fair few other people, probably hundreds of thousands of other people, chose the other route last week and went straight to KFC and Macca's. Do you think, as a country, I mean, we're not as bad as the US, but you think as a country we're losing the plot a little bit in terms of our connection to nature and gathering our own food and cooking our own food? Like, I mean,
I've actually spoken to this, publicly and just around the fire with mates over beer, and that game, around fire. I mean, it's all about a primal connection to doing what is actually good for us. So, you described a moment ago, your partner said you come back from a dive and your whole disposition had changed. But there's actually something physiological going on there. Your Mother Nature makes us feel good about things that are good for us, that we should be doing. And people will say to me all the time, geez, you got a bit excited and yahooed a bit when you caught that fish. Well, that's my body's natural response. Yeah. So what's going on there is, and it comes back from primal times, if the man, the hunter-gatherer, or not always the man, went out to get some food and they were successful, well, first off, you hook a big fish or you're in a tussle with an animal to kill it, in the bush or wherever, your body actually gives you adrenaline first. So you get the strength to be able to do it. And, people say all the time, geez, how do you swing on a rod for 12 hours or 15 hours pulling on a swordfish? Whereas you couldn't physically get a stick and hold a 20-kilo weight on the end of it. Yeah. But the adrenaline, knowing that there's a fish there, gives you the strength. So that's the first natural response your body gets, is that strength. And then when you've landed the fish, if all we thought about was, oh my God, I've killed something, oh, you felt terrible, well, you'd never do it again. So your body releases endorphins and said, guess what? You've just done well. You've done something that will keep your family alive, potentially your village alive for the next month. And now you've got, and that's to lock it in, to give you this good feeling so you go and do it again. I don't want to get too much into anthropology, but it's kind of like sex. A lot of guys might say they wouldn't even talk to a woman if sex didn't feel good. So, it's just another example of your body rewards you with these feelings when you're doing things that are good for you. So that's why, I think Kiwis internationally have got this thing. I've done a lot of travel and speak to a lot of people. You hear people talk about Kiwis, like, man, Kiwis got this great disposition, this real connection with their land and the sea and all that sort of stuff. And that's because we're actively doing it. This enigma that is the Kiwi, the brand, the personality, that how other people see us, that is innately attached to the fact that we still hunt and we still fish regularly. And it gives us this disposition that people can't quite figure it out. They're like, man, there's something about you guys, you're just so cool. And it's because we're doing that. But as that's shrinking and less people having that direct connection with their food, the thing that is Kiwi is being lost a little bit. And that, I'm worried. I'm legitimately worried about what that means for us. If slowly we just become more a bland Western civilization that relies on the supermarket and the takeaways, as you allude to, for getting your food. Because, how can I describe it, as like going back to that whole anthropological thing, and being rewarded and your body feeling good about doing something. You know what it feels like when you go out, you catch a fish or get a cray, and you're sitting around with friends or family eating it. It feels good because it should, and it's because humans have felt good about that for hundreds of thousands of years. You could do it another way. You could jump in your car in the morning, sit on motorway traffic, drive for an hour in traffic. You could work for a boss you think's an asshole, do it anyway. He gives you some money at the end of the week. Then you sit in traffic again, go to the supermarket, buy a crayfish, bring it home, and go, oh mate, I've got a cray and I earned it. Well, yes, you did earn that cray, but you've had to go through a whole lot of bullshit to get it. Exactly. Whereas, mate, there's nothing like going to the source, cutting out the middleman, cutting out all the other bullshit in the world, and just grabbing that cray and eating it with your mates. And that is the essence of what gives us this cool Kiwi disposition.
Hit the nail on the head there, mate. I think, I've experienced both worlds. I've lived in the city after sort of growing up in small towns and going to the city, and just that whole thing of being stuck in the grind, spending over an hour in traffic to go to a job that you don't like, working for someone you don't like, and then coming home and you're just like, what am I doing? So I feel very grateful that I made a decision at a very early age to get back to the coast. and do what I love. What
Yep.
what you've obviously followed your passion from a very early age. What led you down that route? What inspired you down that route?
Um, Family, I get. It's just, I mean, my earliest memory is fishing. Like my literal first thing I remember in my life, I was just before my 4th birthday, and I was catching a snapper out of a dinghy with my mum and dad. And I just remember that it's just such a mix of fear and excitement. Um,
Yeah,
I thought my most prized possession in the world, my little sprat rod, which I'd been given for Christmas, was going to get ripped out of my hands. And so, like they say, your earliest memory is something that was quite often traumatic, and it was a little bit traumatic for me. But I just remember catching the snapper, thinking it was the biggest fish I'd ever seen in the world, and I don't know whether that moment had that much of a profound effect that I just wanted that feeling again, that mix of fear and excitement that it set me off on fishing, or whether it was in the blood. I mean, my grandfathers on both sides were fishermen. My mum's brothers are all commercial fishermen from a long line of commercial fishers, and I just wanted to be a commercial fisherman. I worked for my uncles from the age of 12, and by the time I'd finished school, I'd done my 3,500 logged commercial sea hours by working every weekend in all my school holidays. So I was just gonna basically be a commercial fisherman for the rest of my life until, I mean, it kind of came all unstuck on Christmas Day when I was 17, and I got into a punch up with my uncle who owned all the fishing boats over a game of backyard cricket. I won't go into that anyway. We've sorted that out. And so I went away and worked for another uncle on the other side of the family that was a roofer. And I did that. And it was around that time I really discovered recreational fishing more. I mean, I did rec fishing, with my dad as a youngster, but I really just wanted to be a commercial guy just because that's all I ever remember wanting to do. I didn't want to be a bloody fireman. My dad was a fireman actually, but I didn't want to be a fireman or a pilot or have all these other things. I just wanted to be a fisherman. So going away roofing, it only gave me the weekends to go fishing. And that's when I really discovered, geez, there's more than catching fish by the ton. It's it's going back to, I can maybe make a career out of catching them one at a time. Like I used to on the weekends with my dad and my mates, sort of thing. So while I was roofing, I sort of, just sort of kept it as a personal passion that, something that motivated me. And it wasn't until some years later when I'd moved up to the Bay of Islands to work on game fishing boats and stuff. So I'd never ever set out thinking, geez, one day I want to have my own fishing show. It was never that. It came about because, look, I knew I always wanted to be a fisherman, and by the time I was working on game fishing boats, and I was spending up to 200 days a year away from my wife and kids. I'd had kids at that stage, crewing on boats, and as much as I loved the job, I missed the challenge of having my own business, because while I was in Auckland, I started my own roofing business. I was literally sitting on the back deck of the boat one day. We're up at the Kings, and it was shit weather, and we're catching a few marlin, but I just thought, man, I've got to stay fishing because I know I'm a fisherman and I can't be happy unless I'm fishing. I can't go back to commercial because I was already being pretty outspoken against some of the things going on in the commercial fishing industry. I'd just learned. I'd learned about the stuff that I was doing as a youngster in my own family's business. Just the amount of waste and destruction that we were doing and which makes family gatherings interesting to this day. But anyway, so I thought, what can I do where I can stay being a fisherman, have my own business, but not work in the commercial fishing industry? And I just thought, I could start a fishing show. Like, it just popped into my head. And so I just went about doing what other people do when they want to start a business. I wrote out a business plan and went to the bank and asked them to loan me some money so I could buy some TV cameras. And And the woman who was, doing the loans at the time, my personal banker, laughed at me, like literally laughed, and said, "Oh no, I can't. This is cute, but you're a fisherman who's a qualified roofer. I can loan you money to do a roofing business, or I can loan you money for a fishing business, but I can't, in good faith, give this company's money to someone who thinks they're going to start a bloody television production company in Kerikeri with zero experience." So, but the good news was we had enough equity in our house, so I just leveraged the hell out of the house, borrowed the money I needed, and it was pretty easy. The hard part was going home and telling the missus I'd just thrown in our single income, working on game fishing boats that we were just scraping by on, and we've got an extra 80 grand of debt on the mortgage. The good news was, though, I told her that I was going to make a really awesome fishing show, and it was going to all work out. Yeah.
So I grew up watching, the likes of Graham Sinclair, GT.
So,
they all inspired me, and no doubt you got some inspiration from those guys as well. You've sort of taken things to a whole nother level, including a global audience. You've been on talk shows in the US. You've really taken things up a notch. And you're still at the top of your game. You're still making amazing entertainment, and putting recreational fishing on the map in New Zealand. How do you stay ahead of the game and keep reinventing yourself? And did you ever think you'd end up in this position where you're up there?
No. I mean, I didn't think I would, but at the same time as I say that, I didn't think I couldn't either. I hope that doesn't come off as being sort of smug. I've always, I've never felt like, oh, I can't do that. And a lot of it's just blind naivety. Like, geez, if that day that I thought, geez, I could make a fishing show, if I knew back then what I know now about the television industry and how bloody cutthroat it can be, and I would probably never have done it. But, I've always sort of had this thing of, okay, this is what I want to do. I'll just figure out how to do it. And, you only know how you think yourself. So, no, I've never sort of set a goal and said, I want to be on Letterman, or I want the show to be worldwide or anything. It's always been about, right, how can I just make it that little bit better? I mean, the first time was, could I possibly get a TV show onto TV in New Zealand? That was, is it possible? And once it's there, it's like, well, okay, what can we do with it next? And I think if you're just sort of looking at the next thing, you hear quite a lot, oh, you've got to have a plan, you've got to have a grand plan. And yes, I do, but I'd never sort of, and I still don't sort of see, okay, what does global domination of the fishing and the television media industry look like? I've got some ideas on what might work. More and more now, I would think about, what do I want out of it? And the things I want out of it is I want to go fishing more. And in recent years, the success of my business has meant less and less fishing every year for me. Probably for the last 10 years, there's been a trend of less days on the water that I get to do every year. And so you're talking about thinking over lockdown. I had plenty of time to think about it then. It's like, maybe I need to repackage what success looks like.
Yeah.
Because, if you talk about, followers and all that sort of stuff, all of that's growing, which is great. But if that means I get to go fishing less, well, that's not really success, is it? So where do I want to go? I want to spend more time fishing, and perhaps maybe sort of pulling back the media that I do with that, in terms of, hey, maybe I don't need to be the biggest, cut it back, make it more raw and real, because there's no denying that, if I look back at the way our media has been done, I can literally see the influences that I had at the time. So when I was doing stuff with Discovery Channel and everyone's like, oh, hey, it's all got to be danger and hype, I saw that influence on what it meant for our New Zealand shows. I look back at that now and I cringe at it quite a lot. So I guess now I'm just more comfortable with just fishing for the love of it. And if people like what I'm doing and the style of fishing, great. If they don't, I'm not that worried. I used to sort of look, if someone chipped me on social media, there'd be 300 comments on a video and 270 of them were positive.
Yeah.
But the guys that were all like, oh, you're just a dick, you can't even fish, or oh, what a tosser I got. They were the people that I felt I needed to respond to, not all the, and I don't know, as I get a bit older, I just won't call it thick skin, but I've just kind of, I just want to do what I want to do, and hopefully other people will still enjoy it and follow it.
Yeah. Well, no doubt COVID and, the economy being shut down for 5 weeks and, then it's still reasonably slow. It's undoubtedly had an effect on your business, as it has a lot of other businesses. Well, I'm still off the water. What probably hasn't been talked about so much in media is like the social and mental health side of things. What you're looking pretty sharp yourself there, Matt. What have you been doing to stay mentally sharp and positive, and keeping yourself going back in the office each day and keeping your business going?
Well, it's there's a few things at play. There's still things that that I want to I still want to do. So I want to both on the water. So there's places I want to go, and there's content I want to produce and put out there. So that seeing your ideas fulfilled is a big motivator for me. And it can get frustrating when there's roadblocks. And like the biggest roadblock, as you alluded to, is not having the money to do it, particularly when sponsors and advertisers have had their spend frozen, and which has which I just didn't see coming, having such an immediate effect on us. But I try and harness some of that that 25-year-old me that was just dumb and keen, and just wanted to, that was how old I was when I, threw myself into making a fishing show, and just go, well, harness some of that bloody energy. And it's a little bit, it's all very well saying that when you're 45, not 25. So just to sort of keep myself fit and thinking, well, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go for a run, and, I give myself an opportunity for a bit of a reward and say, right, I've got to get all this business stuff done, but at the end of the week, on Friday, once it's all done, I'm going to shoot out to the farm and go for a dive. So just giving myself those little opportunities to get back to what I love, rather than it all being about, right, I've just worked 7 days a week to try and keep the business alive, and I'll get a reward down the track. Well, that might never come. So going for runs, getting up in the morning, doing some yoga, that's been a new one for me, which
might be a few keen fishers out there going, what, Matt Watson's doing yoga? What's that all about?
Don't worry. No, I still drink Lion Red, mate. I still drink Lion Red. Don't you worry about that. But no, I actually started it when I was boxing. I took up boxing quite seriously a few years back, and it was actually my boxing trainer said, oh, you should do yoga. And I thought he was taking the piss, because he's a big, tough bastard. And he said, oh, well, I do it. And I thought, geez, well, if it's good enough for him, 50 professional heavyweight fights and tough as teak, I thought, I'll give it a go, and actually improve my boxing. Just the flexibility, and it was a good foil for the intense training. Yeah. So I was finding myself pretty stressed out at the start of lockdown with where business was going, being caged up, and I just looked it up on YouTube and gave it a go. And it wasn't like I'd finished it again, because it's bloody hard, twisting yourself around and shit. It's not like I finished it. Wow, I feel amazing now. Like it took, I had to sort of force myself to do it for 3 or 4 sessions, and it wasn't about a week later, I just started feeling better and more able to cope. And it comes back to all of that anthropology stuff that we're talking about. Being physical and moving and doing all these things that we're supposed to do actually helps your state of mind. And it's actually got me feeling like I want to sort of take more on at the moment, which is good.
Yeah, I've done a bit of yoga. I'd like to do more, but the few times that I have done it, I've definitely felt very balanced, very very grounded. Is that sort of what you get out of it as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, who would have thought? Geez, mate, my 25-year-old self would kick my ass right now, even just for this conversation. But hey, don't fucking judge me out there. Just all right.
Good on you, Matt. Good on you. So let's get back on the fishing tack. What's
of course.
I'm going to give you three questions around your favourite fish. What's your favourite fish just to catch, just for the sheer thrill of it?
Giant trevally. Yeah, giant trevally. Yeah. Just because I haven't caught that many, and each one is tough, and it just makes me. I think any fish that you hook and you do a little bit of wheeze, that you're freaking out that much, and then you get to catch it, it's good. But I mean, it's a close run thing. There's so many, Yeah. There's so many. But I'd say giant trevally.
What about your favourite fish to eat? If you're just going to go out there and get something for the pantry, what would it be?
Oh, for the pantry, I love to eat tuna raw, like your yellowfin and big eye. Just love that stuff. But in terms of a fish that, I'm going to catch and I'm going to eat, I love blue cod, like cooked, but if there's a cooked fish, I love blue cod. I love butterfish. And I love, I really like harp hooker, ahead of your bass and blue. I do like black bass and blue nose, but the old genuine harp hooker just got a bit bloodier and a bit fishier taste to me, when they got that fat on them. So, yeah.
Can't beat those harp hooker heads balled up for fish stock, eh?
Yeah. Oh, mate, yeah. Yeah, mate, I'm a fish head fan. You probably know that. I'm a real fan of fish heads.
Yeah. So let's go to butterfish. I haven't cooked a lot of butterfish. I got four in the chili bin from today. What's your favourite way to cook it,
mate? It's in the name, butter. So I fillet them up, skin them up. They're one of the few fish, well, probably just about the only fish that I actually normally gut. I gut them at sea. When I come in for my dive.
Yeah.
Just because all of the bits of kelp get everywhere. I normally prefer to fillet fish with the guts in. They just hold together a bit better. But I gut my butters, fillet them, take the skin off, wipe all those poxy scales off. They get scales all over them. And then I just cut it into sections and score the back side of it, because they twist, like it really twists and binds up in the pan. And I just pepper, salt, or whatever seasoning you want to do, and then a little bit of oil in the pan so you don't burn your butter. Chuck in some butter and just pan fry it. Don't even coat it with flour.
Yeah.
Just literally pan fry it into a bit of butter and oil, and mate, beauty. Yeah.
Beautiful. My mouth's watering. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. So, in the process of filming all your TV shows, I mean, you must have met some amazing people over the years. I've seen you've hosted some amazing people. You regularly have the All Blacks on your boat. What's I'm gonna quiz you about who's the funniest person you've had on the boat?
Funniest, Brody Retallick.
Yep.
Guys, just like he's actually got a really wicked sense of humour, and he's just the sight of him, and the things that he comes up with just makes you laugh. So yeah, he would be the funniest guy, definitely.
What about the most inspiring?
Inspiring. Wow. There's been quite a few people that I've had that have inspired me. Well, a lot actually. One that I can sort of recall off the top of my head would be, before I started filming, when I was working on the prime time and sword fishing, and it was John, the owner, the skipper, his dad, who's sadly recently passed away. he was almost 70, and he fought a swordfish for 16 hours and 40 minutes.
Wow.
And we had a lot of drag on that fish. He'd already caught one for the trip. And yeah, just seeing what he put his body through without complaining in a tricky situation. He'd had, I think, a triple bypass not all that far beforehand. And I, not too much sort of hits me, but there was a moment, and it was after about 10 hours, and John, the skipper, called me upstairs. He gave me the old finger, which no decky likes, being called up to the bridge. I thought, shit, what have I done wrong, mate? I got the finger. And I went up there, and he's like, right, you need to get Dad out of the chair. And I said, well, what do you mean he's going all right? And he said, well, he had a bloody, unbeknown to me, he had a bloody triple bypass. And if he keeps going like this, I'm going to be taking him home in a body bag. So I went down and tried to talk him out of the chair. And he sort of politely said, no, I've got this, and then so 15 minutes later, I just tried to keep my eyes on the horizon and steer the chair. As soon as I turned around, I got the finger to go back up to the bridge again. And I went up, and John said, look, I told you to get him out of the chair. So I went back and said, come on, Tom, you've done the bulk of this fight, mate. Let one of the young boys jump in the chair and finish it. To which he said, look, if John doesn't want to come down and tell me himself that he wants me out of the chair, he should probably do that. And I wasn't prepared to go and communicate that, but he said, I'll tell you one thing. He said, I could die in this chair fighting this fish. He said, I'm not a young man anymore, but if I die in this chair, or if I die in 10 years, if I die this afternoon, or I die in 10 years, or I die, in 20 years, he said, I'll die regretting I gave up. But if I fight this fish, and whether I get it or whether I die here, I will die today with no regrets. And I just thought, wow, man, it's like someone had never said anything that powerful to me. And I sort of thought, it gave me a bit of perspective. And he carried on for another 6 hours. Like, it was big. Actually, he was 69 at the time. He was almost 70. And his legs were trembling. There's a lot of stress on his body, but not once did he say, nah, this hurts, or I'm going to give up. And that was the first time I saw what it's possible to put a human body through, when your mind's focused on it. So
that's a long
there's been lots of great and famous people that I've drawn inspiration from, but in terms of a single fishing moment, that was it for me.
Did you get the fish?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, awesome.
Unfortunately, yeah, we got it after 16 hours and 40 minutes. And we'd avoided, at about the 6 hour stage, we avoided a big Marco that had come around the boat. We took care of that because we'd had a few swords lost. And about a 60 kilo one bit it as we were pulling it through the door. So it was disqualified. Otherwise, it would have made the world record at the time.
Oh, wow.
Which was pretty gutting. But again, to the credit of Tom, he just said, I sort of looked at him and felt gutted for him, because it's like, we knew it was, probably going to, when we hung it up, go pretty close, to being the worldie, and it was a disqualified fish now, that it got bit coming through the, while we were trying to tie ropes around it to get it through the door. And he said, that doesn't matter. He said, I know I've beaten that fish. I've beaten it fair and square. And I've kind of taken that same philosophy. It's still taken me a little bit longer than back then. I don't weigh any fish at clubs anymore. It's not that I've got anything against game fishing clubs. I think they've definitely got a place, and they're a big part of the whole economy that drives fishing in New Zealand and around the world, and a huge part of the conservation effort. But for me, if I catch a fish, I don't really care if a bunch of old dudes in Florida say, yes, you did it right.
Yeah.
To me, it's about, do I feel like I've done it right? Which I recount a lot of my greatest fish is not my biggest ones. It's sort of a more personal thing than that. There's definitely a period there where I wanted to win every trophy in the cabinet at my fishing club, and I'm not bagging people at fishing clubs, not at all, but just for me personally, no, it's, just like Tom said, it doesn't matter. He said, I know I beat that fish. Doesn't matter if it gets disqualified.
Yeah. And it would have been good tucker too.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, exactly. That was,
So
Yeah,
while we're on the topic of swordfish, I put a bit of a post up on my Facebook last night and alluded to the fact I was talking to you today, and asked what people might want to hear. And probably the most comments I got was, how do you catch so many swordfish? What's without giving too much away, like what? There's still a bit of life left in the season too. We're in May. You know, it's probably prime time once we're back out there. Hopefully,
yeah, it is.
Week.
Yep.
What someone wanting to go out and catch their first one? What tips would you have other than going and?
Okay, geez. Well, with what I can do, like in the limited amount of bloody space we've got, without bloody tying up rigs and stuff. Oh, and I will just mention, if you don't mind me sort of plugging, you can actually, all of the rigs that I do that I legitimately use are done in step-by-step videos, and they're free. Like no strings attached, just free to watch on our platform, Ultimate Fishing TV. So I use squid and mackerel predominantly, and the rigs of the exact baits that I use, step by step, are on there. So in terms of the rigging side, just jump on there and take a look. In terms of where to go and how to do it, I'll tell you a bit of a yarn about how about 5 years ago, I took my bloody boat in for a service and all my marks got stolen. It was actually, well, the trailer was getting a warrant. And several months later, I heard a friend that worked at the building supply place in town say, I heard a couple of builders saying that they've got your marks. And one saying, I've got all of Matt Watts's marks, do you want them? And then so it made me sort of jump into my plotter, and I saw that, the last place my plotter had been turned on was the same in Whangarei, at the place where my warrant was done. So I sort of looked into it, and they turned out they pinned it on a staff member who had left, but all of my marks got out. Everyone in Northland had them, and further afield. And on there, I'd made the mistake of writing swordfish on all my spots. So I'd go back to these places where I'd see no one, and there'd be 6 boats sword fishing, sort of thing. Same as a pocket spot. So I took it upon myself to learn new places that year. And in my first 3 trips, I went to 3 places that I'd never been before. Like I'd not sword fished within 5 nautical miles of those areas. And I caught either a swordfish on my first drop or my second drop. And one of the places I caught a swordfish on my first and second drop. Yeah. And they were all picked off the chart. And I'll tell you what I looked for. I just looked at the 500 metre contour line, and wherever there was a kink in it, basically wherever there was a kink and the contour lines bunched up is where I went. And that just stuck in my head from talking to a service liner on the SSB one night when I was working on the prime time. And I was just talking about, well, what areas do you look for? And he just said, follow the 500 metre contour line and look for where it bunches up. And I did that off of a chart. I went to 3 spots I'd legit never fished before. And of course, I drive around and use my sounder a lot. So I've got Ferno gear, which is, I think you use the same. It's just that far ahead of the rest. But when you're looking at depths like that, I want to be able to trust what's down there. Yeah. And I've heard all the rumours, people saying I've got gear that can mark swords, and that's why I'm dropping on them. I'd love to think I was that good, but no. I could. There's been marks that I've suspected might be swords, but I'm just looking for their tucker, and I'm looking for it 100 metres up off the bottom. And wherever I suspect that it's mostly frost fish. So go to the 500 metre line, wherever there's a kink in it, sound it out and find where there's a reasonable drop. Look for food 100 metres up off the bottom. And that's honestly what I do, and I've had, good success. That's probably all I can tell you in a nutshell.
Circle hook or J hook?
Circle all day, mate. Yeah, I've had one of the things. Early on, when I worked on the prime time, and we were night fishing, which is a whole lot harder. It's just so much harder to catch a swordfish at night. To me, catching a swordfish during the day is almost ridiculously easy. And I don't want to sort of sound like a smart ass. I was going out, I was watching my son and daughter play rugby and netball, and launching my 5-metre boat at 1 o'clock, catching bait on the way out and catching 2 swords. You should not be allowed to do that. You know, a swordfish is more special than popping out after watching kids sport in the morning on a Saturday, being back in by 7 p.m. and tagging 2 swords and 2 decent ones, you know, like a 180 and a 120, you know, out of a centre console. No, that's bullshit. Sorry, as an aside, but you know, so like during the night, we used to use J hooks, you know, because with the fights we were getting were so much stronger. And our theory in those early days was we need to hurt the fish. If we get a giant one, we've got no hope of landing it with a J. The thing is, at night, though, I mean, of all the swords we caught at night on the prime time, all using open gate, offset Js, you know, with the theory of trying to hook them deep, we only ever hooked 2 deep that we hurt. And through observations, I figured out what was going on, you know, just from the amount of nights that I spent out there sword fishing, watching. Some nights, like, we'd have a bait out on a balloon, a long bait, and it would be normally 20 metres below the surface at night. And we pretty much only ever caught sharks on that. And I was always lobbying John to get rid of that shallow bait. It took a couple of years, but we did end up getting rid of that one. We had another bait about 35 metres down, out on a balloon, just a little bit closer to the boat, and 180 off the rod tip. And I would say that 35 metre bait caught 70% of our fish, and then the other 30% were on that 80 metre, sort of 80 to 100 metre deep bait. But so many times, you might just hear a slight tick on the reel or something would kind of alert you to it. And you'd look down and the 80 metre bait, which we had a couple of bloody, you know, we might have a 32 ounce sinker on to keep it down there. The line was slack. And you'd look in the water and be, what's that glow? And it'd be our light stick. And then you'd have a closer look and there'd be this sort of orb around it, and it was a swordfish eye. And it had just grabbed a hold of the squid and swum up to the surface to see the lights of the boat. Sometimes they'd have both baits, but they wouldn't swallow them. They'd just hold them in their mouths. And learning about how a swordfish feeds, being a slash and retrieve feeder, you know, the number of times I was pulling a bait out and you felt the whack on the line, it was almost like a snapper bite, like boom, boom, boom. It's them coming through and they're slashing at the bait, boom, 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 and you feel that. And you probably heard a lot of people saying, oh, it's like snapper bites, you know. Yeah. What they're doing is, because their eyes, their vision's so much better than the squid and other bait fish around them, they've got the best eyesight of any fish. Well, sorry, the lens on their eye pulls in more light than any other lens on any other fish. And they've got a gland that heats the nerve that goes from their brain to their eye. So down in that freezing cold, or even at night when they're near the surface, they can compute vision. They can see. They got night vision, basically. So when they see a school of squid, might be hanging around your light stick, they come through and they slash at it. So their bill's flattened that way, scientists. And as they're slashing at that school, they're maybe banging up your bait as well. So you feel that boom, boom, boom. Then there's normally about a 10-second pause, and then you'll feel the weight just come on slowly. And the reason it comes on slowly is not like a marlin bite or a tuna bite where they crash into it. It's because they're in no hurry to eat, because they know that after they've come through slashing, most of the fish are going to scatter, and all the ones they've hit are going to be sitting there wounded. They can just pick them up. And I don't believe they swallow until they see something else that they're ready to attack and eat again. Because we would, with these open J's, we would free spool sometimes for like 2 minutes, and we'd hook them in the corner of the mouth every time. Yeah. And the night that we hooked 2 deep was a night that the ocean was just alive with squid. And I just believe that they grabbed our squid, swallowed them, and carried on to try and hit some more. Yeah. So, yeah, long-winded sort of way of saying, I mean, that was our theory when we were night fishing. And then we just sort of took our J-hook theory over to deep dropping during the day when it happened, because we'd always just use J's for swords. And what we found during the day is when we used the J's, we were pretty much deep hooking every second or third fish. Because during the day down deep, they just seem to gulp. You know, they'll find a bait and they'll gulp it down. And I was so disappointed with the fights we got out of swordfish during the day, partly because they're coming up to the surface. So you know, they do the opposite. You hook them on the surface at night, they go deep and you're in for a slog. During the day, they were coming up. and we were gagging them. And so I switched over to circles, and not only did I find my hookup rate was better, we were actually getting better fights. And you know, it was the opposite to the theory when we started. We just wanted to try and take the fight out of them, because there were that many times in those early days we just got our asses kicked on 1:30 at night. You know, fish would get over the edge of the shelf, just run down until we ran out of line. But you know, it kind of amuses me. If you want to have that badge of honour and say I've caught a swordfish, why would you choke it on a J hook? You know, and wind up the slack and say, look at the size of this sword that I caught. You haven't caught a sword. You know, you've choked it. And that's where the rules are kind of a mockery. You have a guy like Tom, who fought a swordfish for 16 hours and 40 minutes, and it got wounded literally as it was coming through the door, and that fish is disqualified. Yet there's world records out there of fish that were choked in the first 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And floated up dead, and hey, look at my world record. That's, wow, you know, like, it kind of makes a mockery of why you'd go fishing. And to me, if you want to catch a sword, you want to do it because you know that you've got the best out of that fish. So get a circle, and then just like all the other species I use circles for, you get to make a choice whether you need that fish, you want to take it, or let it go. That choice gets taken away from you if it's gushing blood out of the gills.
The ones you have kept, I mean, it's pretty good tucker. I think it's like the texture and consistency is a little bit like pork. It's almost not like
it is
bloody great eating. What's your favourite way to cook it?
Oh man, you can do so much with it. Baked, pan fried, just how you'd cook. You know, if you've got a nice bit of veal, and you know, if how you just sort of fry a bit of veal, pan fried, it absorbs anything you put on it. So I've had some great dishes. You know, my wife doesn't like the taste of fish as much as I do. So you know, when we've got a chunk of swordfish, she kind of wants to get into all the, you know, the pestos and flavorings and all that sort of stuff that go along with it. Yeah, and it does absorb it, and because it's so oily, it doesn't overcook. I mean, you know, I like it, but I don't love it. And I tend to let go the swords that I catch, just because I know that one day one is going to be mortally wounded. And I had one last year. My son, it was his first swordfish. And he was almost in tears that we couldn't let it go. We tried 45 minutes to let it go. And I said, mate, it's okay. It's none of it's going to get wasted. And, you know, this is the very reason that I let the healthy ones go, because I know that one day one's not going to be healthy. And that's one Tangaroa wants me to take.
Exactly. So you just launched a new boat, Matt, which is going to, you know, everyone will get to see it in the new series coming up. It looks incredible. It looks sick. One of the things I admire about you is you've stuck with pretty much a lot of the sponsors have backed you from the beginning, and obviously Stabbycraft are one of them. Carried those relationships and stayed loyal through the years with them. One of those would be Furuno, and I see they've kitted you out with the very latest and greatest in WASP multi-beam sonar. What's it like having that that sort of kit on your boat? Has it been a game changer?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm still getting to know it, but it's blown my mind. You know, like I'd heard about all the stuff that it could do, and the whole theory behind it, and I was a little bit skeptical. And like the 3D mapping and all that is great. You know, like it's like everywhere you go, you're drawing a map of the seafloor. But the amount of control you've got with the amount of detail in the mapping and how you can customize it to your own views is incredible. But in day-to-day use, what blows my mind is the width of the beam. And it really got me in the, you know, when it was brand new, it was like my second time out on the boat, you know, after literally commissioning the electronics, and it was snapper spawning season up here. And I'd headed out the day before the AVs came out, because I thought, should I better go and find out where, you know, some fish are. And I was marking snapper 35 meters either side of my boat. So I had a 70-meter wide swathe, and not only would it pick up and draw the mark of where the fish were on the chart, I could filter out. You can filter out fish that you don't want. So what I'd do is I'd sort of go over the top of where some fish were, and I would know that they were, because I'm still running my normal. I was running my Freno DF3 as well, simultaneously, 2 transducers going through. And I know what snapper marks look like on those. So I'd go over the top, mark them. The same fish that I was marking on my wasp, you can hold your cursor over the top of that mark and it'll tell you the decibel reading, like the strength, the frequency that mark is giving you back. So then I just go into my mark settings, and I would say I only want to see marks that are in this frequency range. So when you've got snapper that might be in amongst some mau and a whole bunch of other shit, I just filter them out. And so only the snapper were being drawn on my chart. So I'd just drive over an area and I'd see a cluster of marks, and hold the cursor over and go, yep, they're in the right frequency range for snapper. And literally you're getting a live real-time picture of where the snapper is sitting all around you, and go over. As soon as they're showing on the 2D view, boom, just dropping our liveys and jigs and soft baits, whatever, straight to them. Just incredible. And we filmed some stuff which is still to be released on doing exactly that.
Yeah. Have you found much ground just with the 3D mapping and the sonar, much ground that you didn't know was there? Has it given you insight into grounds you thought you knew back in your hand?
It does. Not only, with a 2D view, you kind of you have a bit of a feeling. You think rocks, rocks that I've fished for years, in the bay. Once they're 3D mapped, you're like, holy crap, there's actually like a real sharp edge on this side and it goes down to mud. Because it draws you can flick it into a mode where instead of having your shading by depth, you can have it by bottom density. So you can see literally in live real time how hard the bottom is as well, which is just, and it's all a couple of clicks away. You just click on something, you drop down, click on that, and it has really changed. The trouble is, mate, geez, I've just about driven into about 4 boats just because I'm spending so much time like this now, click, 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 especially snapper spawning season, it's all the bloody boats out in the bay. I'm fixated on the screen, and that's, aside from the danger of that, let's not forget as fishermen, I still equally enjoy going out in a dinghy with no electronics and using nous, just where the birds are active, the way the birds are moving on the water, all of those sorts of things that, you learn as being a fisherman, that I learned from my uncles when we did have no electronics on my boat. It's, yes, electronics are incredible, but don't forget how to use these and even your nose, smelling bait fish, all of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, you're on it. I think the last time I saw you, Matt, was I was lucky enough to get up and have a fish with you on your last boat, and probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
a couple of awesome days. I think the last day we headed out of Monganui, and got a whole lot of gem fish which we smoked up, and some nice big bass. I remember that very, very fondly. You got an awesome backyard up there. Now you mentioned you're building at the moment. You're building your dream pad outside of town, out near the water. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's coming on.
Yeah, it's pretty much right at the northern tip of the Bay of Islands. Just through a crazy set of circumstances, I came across the guy that was selling it 10 years ago, and same sort of thing. Really had a bit of a job convincing the missus that we go into debt to, grab a block of dirt, because she's just not as passionate about the sea as what I am, So fortunately, she saw the potential in it. And what actually got her across the line was not, hey, it's an amazing bit of land on the coast where you can literally fish off your front doorstep. It was the fact that what I said to her was, look, in our lifetimes, we've seen beaches disappear, not just in Northland, but all around New Zealand. They've gone into foreign ownership. The ones that you do still have access to are crowded, and every last muscle's been ripped off the rocks. I said, what better gift could we give to our kids and grandkids than, having access to the coast where they can do the things we did when we were kids, go and get some mussels off the rocks, or, still have power in the rock pools. So again, it comes right back to, the land's great, but it's what it can give to you, and what you can give back as well. I mean, since in that 10 years, we've had it for 10 years, and we only started building a couple of months ago, but we've planted 27,000 native trees on it.
Wow.
In the meantime. We've got another 5,000 going in the end of this month. And I've just got a vision of restoring it back to pre-European times. And I'll never see that fulfilled in my lifetime, but I've started it, and my kids and grandkids will probably see the job done.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. I'm sort of in a slightly similar boat, moved just out the edge of town. You see I've got a little bit of a view of the Aldi's in behind me.
Nice. Yeah.
Nice big bit of land, but I think one of the things, just with that little bit of whenua, just that connection to nature you have, especially you go through the building process. We've built a few cabins just to dot around the building site and live on site while we build. But I think one of the things I've enjoyed is just that that exercise and moving, getting out, and just seeing something tangible from results, instead of sitting in front of a computer doing work. If you're off the water, actually getting out there and doing something physical and seeing, like you're saying, you've planted 27,000 plants so far. Just being able to go and see them grow, it must be pretty fulfilling.
Oh, mate, it's huge. Yeah, like not just. At the end of the day of planting, I can not only look back and see, hey, look, there's hundreds more plants in the ground that weren't there today. And it might be, don't get me wrong, I've got blisters, and the old body's not getting any better for me to be on a shovel, particularly some of the hills that I'm climbing up. But I get a real buzz out of it, and it's a buzz that keeps giving back. Every time I go back to the property and they've grown a little bit, I'm like, and you start to visualise what it's going to be like when it's full native cover, and it's same as last weekend. I spent the weekend on a concrete mixer, hand mixing concrete to get our foundation piles in, and people are like, geez, that must have sucked, and I loved every minute of it. I didn't love how sore I was and that I could barely walk. And, and we had a couple of young labourers, I wanted to sort of set the pace for them, so there was a little bit of bravado there spurring me on, but I loved it, mate. I loved every minute of it. And again, it comes back to that primal thing, shelter was one of the things that you're supposed to be doing, and yes, you can work in an office like I do a lot of the time and earn the money and pay someone else to do it. I just don't think that's rewarding as building your own shelter. So any day I'm doing it tomorrow. I've got a couple of bloody Zoom meetings first thing in the morning, and then I'm out to site and I'm back on the concrete mixer. And like I'm legitimately frothing about the opportunity to get my hands dirty and build shelter for my family,
Awesome. Yeah, you alluded back to your days of commercial fishing early on in our talk. What's your view on the state of the New Zealand fishery? Are we managing it right? You've obviously been working on the water for many years, both commercial, now recreational and entertainment. How have you seen it change? Do you think we're managing it right at a governance level?
No, we're not. No, it's quite simple. We can fall into the trap of going, oh, look, snapper fishing is better this year than it was last year. Or, geez, there's more kingies around than what there used to be. But the benchmark for our generation is pretty low. Like the 80s, it was pretty well decimated, a lot of the fishing. So where we're seeing minuscule improvements in some fishery is because it's so low, okay? And so it's been fished down so hard. And we've just got a broken system. The quota management system does not work, not in its current form. I feel the intent of it when it was started was kind of right, and it could have been right. And I still wholeheartedly believe in commercial fishermen having a vested ownership over the fish they catch. I don't know if ownership is the right word, a vested interest, which is kind of, I believe, the intent of setting it up. Okay, you get some quota and it's like getting a bit of land and you can farm it. The difference is when that quota falls into the hands of a corporate. A corporation or a company by its very nature isn't human. It is designed purely for profit. And if being responsible and caring of the environment and honest affects your profit, well, it's not going to work. So the people that are profiting out of the destruction of our oceans aren't fishermen. They're not people like you and I that love the ocean, care for it, understand the real value of a fish isn't a per kilo weight. It's what it gives you. It's what it nourishes your soul, what it feeds your family. So, when people are looking at a spreadsheet going, how can we get more profit out of this? And that's what's driving how the fish are being extracted. It can only go in one direction, which is to destruction. I say get the quota and control of the fishermen, because don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-commercial fishermen. The vast majority, like the percentage of good commercial fishermen is the same percentage of good wreck fishermen. There's dickheads on both sides that just want to abuse and fill their boat up and don't give a shit about it. But these guys, the most of the commercial fishermen that you see on the water, when you see a commercial boat going past, they don't own the quota. They're essentially a slave to a corporation. They're only being given just enough to survive. So, there needs to be some changes made where some of the control goes back to the people on the water that actually care about it. And that means deconstructing our current system, taking the power out of those big companies.
Yeah, I think where it hits home for me is a classic example in Tyra is I've got a good mate that owns a restaurant right on the water's edge, probably 20 steps away from where the local crayfisherman comes in and unloads his catch. And for many years, he's been unable to buy crayfish off this guy because it's all sucked up, goes to Whitianga, to the factory. That's obviously takes diesel.
Yeah.
To truck those crayfish up there, it gets swum in tanks for, I don't know, it might be anywhere from a couple of days to a week. Yeah. And imagine the energy that gets put into that. Then it gets diesel to Auckland. And before all this COVID thing happened, it would be then jet fueled to China. So locals that want to go and eat at the restaurant, or tourists, haven't been able to eat the crayfish that are swimming right on our back doorstep. It to me is just absolutely madness. And we talk about climate change. That there, we can plant as many trees as we want and everything, but I think a lot of what we're talking about climate change comes down to how we manage food and source our food. We should be sourcing food as close to home as possible and not shipping it halfway around the world, in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, mate, exactly. Yeah, and I'll give you a quick version of a local Kerikeri version of that same thing. Young guy, neat entrepreneurial fella, started up a burger joint in Kerikeri, and it's cranking. Mate, he just makes the best burgers. I'll give him a plug. Burger Fiasco, here in Kerry. And he thought, I'm gonna. He sort of asked me one day, he goes, mate, I love that free fish head thing you do about getting people to use the whole fish heads and all that. I want to make a burger along those lines. So I want to get a hold of some blue nose chicks. It's like, good on you, mate. So he put it on the menu, and so there's literally straight out here, there's boats coming in loaded with tons of blue nose. Okay, so he tried to get some of them. Nah, can't do it. So the blue nose get freighted down to Auckland to even get filleted and cleaned. So they're not even getting, no locals, and there's plenty of unemployment up here, ain't getting jobs. They're going to a processing plant in Auckland. He has to pay more than the cost for the fillet because they don't normally bother chopping the cheeks out. to get the offal, because that's a special order. So he has to pay extra for them to then get on a truck and come all the way up to be dropped at his place, and the cost made it unviable. When he wanted to use a waste product, potentially employ a local on the wharf that could chop the cheeks out to save them going into, and it's ridiculous. And I mean, we could even take it a step further and say, wouldn't it be amazing? I mean, let's talk about our tourism industry, because that's always been hung up on a pedestal as New Zealand, not so much now, but our great export earner. Does a tourist really want to come, to Whitianga or Tairua and sit in a restaurant and eat a bit of cow that's come from Auckland, or a bit of, they want to eat, they see the boats coming in, they want to eat what's coming off those boats. So, for a tourism experience, and even for locals, to be able to go down to the wharf, see what's coming off and see it go straight into the restaurant and get cooked. Or, hey, take it a step further, they can go out and catch the thing themselves. And all of a sudden, instead of getting your $8.50 a kilo and think you're doing quite well for a bit of fish, I did a bit of a study. This is back, in my early 20s when I was working on the prime time about swordfish. The commercial guys at the time, I don't know what they were getting $10 a kilo, and they were just slaying them up through a loophole, which allowed them to catch swords as bycatch. Even though 90% of their catch for some boats was bycatch, they kept accidentally catching all of the swordfish. They were getting $10 a kilo for them. We worked out on the number of swordfish that we killed, and just what and I'm not including all the other tourism ventures that people did when they came to New Zealand, we were getting $1,850 a kilo. And that's just adding up the charter fees, the local accommodation, and the airfares. I was just quizzing the guys that came on the boat. And that didn't include the ones that went down to Queenstown or took their family with them around as well. So if you want to get value out of a fish, and I know that with what you're doing with providers, all about taking the fish, and that's cool, so cool with it. But sport fishing comes under a lot of pressure with you're just grabbing this fish, dragging it around the ocean to torture it and let it go. Well, you could go out on a commercial fishing long line, hook a marlin on it, let it drag around the ocean for the same amount of time, but kill it, okay? And get, let's say on a good day, you might get a couple of $100 for your marlin, or you could get $20,000 or $30,000 for the local economy, and it's still swimming. Yeah. And that's where, and that's lost on a lot of people. And I've been to places that have been referred to as third world countries, Costa Rica, where they just say, hey, guess what? No one's catching any of these fish. Anything that's valuable for a tourist, you're not allowed to kill it. You can kill all these other good eating fish for the locals, and you can still catch them. And they've just got thriving sport fishing industries. Alaska's another one. And I just think New Zealand aren't doing it smart. It's all about catching the most and selling it for the cheapest, instead of catching the least and putting a premium on it. I mean, snapper.
Yeah, even those sword boats, like if they had control of the quota themselves, they'd be selling it for, I don't know, $40, $50 a kilo instead of the $10 a kilo, and they probably would have to catch a lot less, probably a quarter of
That's
what
right.
they're actually catching.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I mean, you take that example or many others. I mean, the fact that you can buy New Zealand snapper cheaper in an Australian supermarket, you can buy it in New Zealand, beggars belief. But what it's about is about bulk. So the fishing companies go, if you guarantee you're going to take 200 tonne a year off of us, we'll give it to you at this rate. So let's keep the supply going. So what they're thinking about is bulk supply. Just so long as we're supplying, the money's ticking up. My way of thinking is, okay, let's just cut off the supply and say, guess what, world? There's only one place in the world that New Zealand snapper is available. This is the new price. This is the new price. And for a little while, they might go away and buy some North Sea herring or eat some whiting, but it's not as good as New Zealand snapper. It hasn't got the brand or the reputation of New Zealand snapper. And we dictate the price.
Yeah.
catch less, sell it for higher. The spatial conflict disappears, the environmental damage disappears because you can use more selective methods. We need to get ahead of the game. We need to be doing what Canada's doing, where you can go to a supermarket in Canada and there's rows of lobster, the Canadian lobster. Each one has got a barcode on it. And when you scan it, or it might even have a little plaque in front of it, you can see the fisherman that's caught it. And so they're all the same price. But when I was there and bought one, I decided to buy it off the guy that wasn't a corporate. There was a third generation lobster potter. And I could read the little blurb about him. I'm like, I'm buying your one, mate. Because you know where it's come from. It's traceable back to the source. So, there's so many things that can be done. I could talk forever about it. But the first thing we've got to do is take, the power out of the corporations that have got it, which are the quota holders, and we've got to dismantle the system because we've got the knowledge now to build a better one.
Yeah. So you're extremely busy man, Matt, and I'm very fortunate, very stoked that you've given up probably over an hour of your time. Say we cleared your calendar for the next 3 days. You could do whatever you want, go wherever you want, spend it with whoever you want. What would you do? Who would you spend your time with?
Oh, geez. Definitely 3 days. Wow. I'm going to have a land-based fish with my son. Me on the fly rod, him fishing he'll probably be fishing soft baits now. He's a bit of a convert. So, I just really enjoy that. Whether it be land-based fishing or whatever, I'd definitely do a free dive.
Yeah.
Definitely. Are we talking lockdown rules still applying?
No rules.
Okay, sweet. Okay, I'd get my big boat out.
Yeah.
And I'd go sword fishing with my mates.
Yeah.
And not that I particularly I do love going sword fishing. Not so much for the swords, which are always good to catch, but I just like seeing one of my mates struggling on the end of a rod while I'm drinking a beer, giving him shit, because I know where, so there'd be a whole day doing that. Free dive and a land-based fish. Funnily enough, when people ask me that, what would I do on my time off? It'd be go fishing.
Yeah.
And if it was a month ago, or a few weeks ago, I'd probably head into the bush for the war.
Yeah, awesome. I see you mentioned your young fella. I see you spend a lot of time with him, and you seem to be imparting a lot of knowledge to him. He seems pretty switched on fisherman these days.
Mate, no, don't talk him up. No, he's not that good. He's passionate about it, man, and he's he was a real late bloomer with it. I really thought he wasn't going to be into fishing, which was cool, of course most dads want their kids to have a share interest, and he just wasn't really interested in fishing until a couple of years ago. Like he would, we still did lots together, but he definitely preferred to come hunting with me than fishing. And man, something changed and he's just gone crazy on it. So it's good for me. When you say share knowledge, sometimes it doesn't always get accepted, and I just think it's a natural way. He wants to learn the hard way sometimes. I'll say, hey mate, you should do it like this, and oh yeah, whatever, dad, type thing. But I'll do my best to share what I can, and it's just neat to be able to spend that time, together. And again, fishing's one of the few things I think that not just fathers and sons or fathers and daughters or mothers and daughters, but people in general across different age brackets can actually genuinely do something together. If a kid was to say, hey dad, let's go down the BMX park, you'd do it and you would have fun. But when you're both doing something you genuinely love and you're equally as vested, it's a pretty rare thing to find, I think, between parents and kids.
And you're showing the kids the connection with nature and getting outdoors into the fresh air. You can't beat it. And that's how I got into fishing. With being out on the water with my old man and my granddad, and sadly neither of them are here with us today, but they're only a memory away, and probably the fondest memories I've got is the time that the great times I spent with them on the water.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I know exactly, and it sounds cliche, but you can't get that time back. So I'm pretty grateful that I've had this opportunity recently, and that I've kind of woken up to it as well. I felt like I perhaps, for quite a few years there didn't have the balance quite right. I kind of thought I did at the time, but I was weighted too heavy to work. I still don't know what the right balance is, but it certainly feels a bit better now. And I think, a word that I'll drop in there, and I think when you sort of summed up about teaching them, is just that word respect. Yeah. And it's a big word, really. It pulls a lot in, it's respect for each other and your environment. And as soon as you understand, yes, it's good to feel good when you kill a fish, or to take it home and eat it. But it's also important to understand that you are killing something as well. So, it's not all very, for young fellas, it's all yeehaw and Red Bull. You sometimes you just need to slow down, have a little bit of a think about something, and no better way to do it than fishing or hunting.
Yeah. Awesome, Matt. Thanks so much for your time. Speaking of family, I better let you get back to your family.
Yeah,
exactly. Hi with whānau.
Will do.
You've got a new show coming up. I've been watching a few of your classics.
Mate.
During lockdown, got a whole new series coming out. When
whole new series coming this winter at the telly. Well, I don't think we're allowed to release the dates yet. That's part of the television bizzo, because they're worried about what the opposition might do. But I would say in the next few weeks we'll be able to make an announcement on start dates for our new series. And yeah, we've got a bit of work. We've got a bit of work to do to put it all together. But we've got some cool shit in the can that I'm excited to see what people think of it, because some of it's a little bit new, different.
Awesome. I can't wait to see it. Thanks, heaps, Matt. And we better catch up for a fish soon.
Good yarn. Yeah, mate. And we get the juices flowing, bro. It's pretty weird having a catch up like this, but yeah, we'll do it again.
Let's go do it on the water.
Yeah, come on, mate. See ya.
See you, mate.
Mate.